following program is sponsored by The Greek, Ely's Radio Shack dealer at 570 Altman in downtown Ely, and brought to you as a public service by Georgetown Media in Ely, Nevada. Natural Resource Advisory Committee meeting, March 21st, 2023.
Enough with everybody on the Zoom, so we'll call the Natural Resource Advisory Committee's March 21st, 2023 meeting. And first item on the agenda is the pledge. Bill, you want to lead us in the pledge tonight?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
We'll move down to item number 2, public comment. Is there any public comment on the phone?
Mr. Chairman, this is Gary Perea.
Hi, Gary.
I just want to take a moment to thank Nicole for the agenda and putting the backup material on the agenda. It makes it a lot easier to follow the meetings. I appreciate it, putting that all together.
Thank you, Gary.
Thanks, Gary. Is there any other public comment on the phone? Public comment in the building?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Chairman, at your last meeting held on February 21st, 2023, I reported that I was hearing different conversations regarding the permitting of solar and wind turbine projects, applying for locations in White Pine County. I have a concern, and I would ask that this advisory committee recommend setting regulations that state that at the end of the life of each project, reclamation must be done. Structures must be removed, and any and all hazardous materials must be transported out of the county to a licensed waste disposal site. Also, I'd like to know if this committee is going to recommend a permit requirement. I didn't see anything to address that on your agenda. I don't know if you plan on doing that, but I'm going to write you a letter asking these same questions. If you folks don't want to get involved in that, that's fine. Then I'll address my issues or concerns to other boards. I don't want to take up your time. Also, at that same meeting, I reported that I attended the county commission meeting on January 25th, 2023, and stated to the chairman that at a recent commission meeting, Commissioner Howe talked about making sure that $450,000 for a well and up to $70,000 for engineering of that well for the county golf course was in the county budget. He stated that I have 2 properties in the Steptoe Valley. One has a 6-inch well, another one has a 10-inch well. Building the well for the golf course concerns me, and it concerns numerous other properties in that valley. The golf course needs to pay its proper fees to the city and for the water it uses as others do. Right now, it receives an unwarranted discount. If the county can spend up to $520,000 for a well, then they can well afford to pay the monthly water bill, which in turn keeps the water system solvent for all users. Again, I'll put that in writing, and I'm asking for the response. And if you folks don't want to get involved, that's fine. I'll know not to come back here, but I want it known there is concerns out there. That's all I have this time, Mr. Chairman. Thank you.
Thanks, George. Is there any other public comment? Hearing none, we'll move down to item 3, which is a discussion update of the White Pine Pump Storage Project from Northwest Energy. Greg, are you there?
I am here. I apologize. The volume is very low, and so I'm not sure if if I'm able to be heard. Can you hear me?
We can hear you now.
So, by way of introduction, I've been by to speak with you before, and my name is Greg Copeland, representing R Plus Hydro. I'll just start with an apology for not being there in person. The weather has precluded us from being able to travel, it appears, standpoint, we thought it might be better if we did this virtually. So members of the commission and the members of the audience here today, we have some information to go over with you, and I'll share my screen if that's at all possible. So can you see my screen?
Yes.
Okay, so the starting off, this is a little bit new format, and so it's hopefully will be something that will be informative, but also a bit also as an update for where we're at. This actually is a photo simulation picture that's on the front cover here that shows the White Pine Lower Reservoir in the background. And I'm going to change my cursor here so I can point to it. The lower reservoir is located about here in this photo simulation that's been projected. The standard disclaimer that you might want to see here, the only thing that I want to highlight here is that that these discussions are subject to change and that they're based on forward-looking assumptions. Here's our table of contents for the presentation today. Can you still hear me? I want to make sure you can still hear me.
We're good.
Okay, good. All right, I'm not going to belabor this point, but intend to go over a bit of introduction of the company. Haven't done that, and I want to make sure that the flow of this includes all of these elements, plus the most important, which is the update on the NRAC tracking issue that I had promised the last time we met, that I would come in and give an update on those specific issue lists. The company background is that the applicant for the license is White Pine Water Power, which is a subsidiary of R+ Hydro, and all of the representations and what you'll see in the documents are White Pine Water Power, but the reality is that there is a company of R+ Hydro that's behind that. And then R+ Hydro is a subsidiary of R+ Energies, and it's a part of the Gardner group of families of companies that has been operating since 1976. It's headquartered in Salt Lake and has offices across the western United States. The other thing that is noteworthy is that the Gardner Group is also involved in providing results-oriented philanthropy and renewable energy technologies through R+ Hydro and R+ Energies that include solar plus battery, pump storage, hydro, and wind projects throughout the country. R+ Hydro has under development about 12 pump storage projects throughout the country. Those are represented by the blue symbols that are on this the blue symbols that are on this map, And we actually currently have about 50% of the current interconnection queue for planned or proposed pump storage hydro. So about half of all of the current pump storage hydro queue interconnection, R+ Hydro, R+ Energies has as a part of that the overall portfolio. We have future projects that are planned in Washington, Wyoming, Utah, New Mexico, Oregon, Colorado, California, Kentucky. We just recently filed the final license application for the Seminole project, which is in Wyoming, and that project is moving ahead about a month ahead of the White Pine project.
Where are the two that are in Nevada?
The Nevada policy goals are that there has been a law passed that requires 50% renewable energy generation supply by 2030 and 100% carbon-free by 2050. This has been codified in the state constitution. They're also relevant is the federal energy policy goals, which requires for the Department of Interior and the BLM in particular to permit 25 gigawatts of renewable energy by 2025. They are likely not to meet that goal, but it is one that they are striving for.
Hey,
As
Greg,
a result, there's a significant amount of energy storage that will be required to facilitate both of those objectives.
Can you hold on for a second, please? There was a question in the room.
Can you hear us now?
Go ahead.
Where are the other two pump storage projects in Nevada? I see two other blue markers in Nevada. One in southern
I'll
Nevada.
repeat that closer to the mic.
The question is, in the state of Nevada, back on the map on page 5 or on slide 5, there's a couple of projects that you have planned in Nevada, and the question was, where are those? That was the question.
There is another project that's under early stage development at Palm Peak that's on western Nevada near Reno. That's the other project that's currently under development. There's another project that hasn't been named yet and hasn't been disclosed yet that's under development in the Las Vegas area.
And then 2 solar projects you have in Nevada?
There is a solar project actually that's under development in both White Pine County and one that's located adjacent to Palm Peak. That's over in the western side of Nevada. The one that's in White Pine County hasn't been licensed and is in early stage development. It's a 400 megawatt solar project.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Part of the reason why it's important for this kind of a project for the grid stability and for the overall interconnection support is because the further integration of renewables into the system and the intermittent nature of solar and wind and its supply ends up with a rather incongruent status for the grid where it's non-dispatchable. So it requires either firming power that comes from established or new current hydrocarbons such as cogen, natural gas plants or otherwise. And so this project actually supplies the firming power that would be necessary for that further integration of additional renewables. So again, to hit those goals that exist within the state constitution. This project actually turns a variable and intermittent renewable energy into a dispatchable energy source. We'll talk about that in a second. And it provides both inertia and reactive power control for grid stabilization and frequency control and voltage control for the entire grid. And what you see here in the pictures are the interaction or the integration of the current and under development transmission interconnection that is taking place in the western United States. The upper right picture shows the GreenLink Nevada loop system, which will integrate both the northern and southern portions of Nevada into a single loop system. This project is about a $2.8 billion capital investment. What you'll see in several different press releases, it's greater than 2.5. The number is refined between 2.5 and 2.8, depending upon which numbers are included. The actual final license application includes numbers slightly over 2.8 billion. It has a capacity for 8 hours of full output as part of the storage, which is equivalent to 8,000 megawatts hours per day for a 1,000 megawatt of generating capacity. Now, to put that in perspective, Hoover Dam, when it's actually full enough to where it can generate its full capacity, right now it's derated, is a 1,200 megawatt unit. And so Hoover Dam is slightly larger than the capacity generation for this particular unit, this particular project. And more importantly, approximately 1/8 of Nevada's peak power demand will be supplied for the 8 hours of generation during the times in which this project is available and generating at its peak capacity. And probably also very important to understand is that this project can reach zero static condition to full power operation within 90 seconds. It takes about 7 to 15 minutes for for natural gas cogeneration plants, if they're not spinning reserve, to come up to speed and be available to supply energy when necessary. This is important when you have a wind farm or a solar plant that trip off for some reason, and now you have a sudden loss of generation for the entire grid. It creates those instabilities we were just talking about. More importantly, and even as important, is the water rights have been secured, and we'll talk about that in a second. And we've already talked about the operational benefits for the grid stability. The economic benefits for the project have to do with two phases, one during the construction phase and one during the long-term operation. During construction, there'll be approximately 500 to 600 jobs over a period of 5 years. That's mostly skilled labor that is going to be drawing from the mining industry that is heavily invested in the local area. Heavy equipment, earth moving, tunneling, those kinds of operations, those people that are used to working with high voltage electricity, those kind of people will be able to come in and find labor or employment on this project during construction. After and during operation, we'll have up to 35 direct full-time employees. And the estimate is that it will be between 30 and 35 full-time direct employees, not the indirect, but the full-time direct employees. Local tax revenue is expected to be more than $12 million annually to local government entities. We've been asked in the past whether or not that includes the tax abatement, and that's actually included in one of the updates slides. And that is based upon the estimates that came from two separate socioeconomic reports that were generated, one by our consultant HDR and the other by Zions Bank. And that number is after the tax abatements that currently exist and are approved by the governor of Nevada are applied. So the numbers if the tax abatements are revised or amended or not there would be actually higher than that. This map shows the project layout, and the yellow shaded areas are public lands, they're BLM lands. The white shaded areas are private, so there's a mix of private and public. The other thing that I wanted to emphasize here on this slide is that we have done in the last 6 months a significant amount of work on revising the actual generation transmission tie line in order to minimize the impacts to the local landowners. The gen tie line is located here and actually skirts the very edge of most of the private landowners. And from the area here, where I'm pointing to with the laser pointer, to the point here, we have reduced the size of the right-of-way corridor from a originally designed plan for 240-foot wide right-of-way to 160-foot wide right-of-way. We were able to do that because of the analysis determined that the wind whipping that occurs for transmission lines is reduced in the Steptoe Valley because there's not as much wind in the lower basin, lower parts of the Steptoe Valley as there is in broaching over the mountainous areas that are to the west. So we were able to reduce that from 240 foot wide to 160 foot wide. We also snugged up the right-of-way corridor to be immediately adjacent to the currently existing NV Energy transmission line that exists, so that we are literally line to line on the right-of-way corridor, so there is no gap in between. This slide shows the project layout as it currently exists and as it has been submitted to the final license application. The better part of 6 months worth of effort in trying to design a road access from the Steptoe side has resulted in this access road that is largely hidden behind some of the bluffs and some of the outcroppings that exist on the front face of the Duck Creek Range. So we've done some photo simulation work on looking eastward and found that the road in most cases is hidden behind those outcroppings and above it, so that it really is not as visual as a scar of a road up the side of the cliff. This is a further refinement. I think I've showed this slide before to the members of the committee. This is a further refinement that reflects the information that is in the final license application. The upper and lower reservoirs have a capacity of about 4,100 acre feet, and that's at full capacity for both of them. Obviously, the reason why it's the same is because the water sifts between those two. As it's recharged, it goes to the upper reservoir. As it's drained for generation, it goes to the lower reservoir. The footprint for a project is about 150 acres, roughly 46 acres of the upper reservoir, 62.8 acres to the lower reservoir. And to put that in perspective, for a 1,000 megawatt solar project, it would require about 6,500 acres in order to be able to generate the same level of capacity. So as a result, there is a extremely dense amount of energy that's generated on a very small footprint of surface disturbance. The conduits are 20 to 22 feet in diameter. The vertical shaft that goes from the upper reservoir to the powerhouse is about 2,400 feet vertical. The tail race is 7,600 feet from the powerhouse out to the lower reservoir. All of that works are underground. The powerhouse and the conduits, those tunnels that will be in existence for transferring the water, are underground works. And also the substation for the project or for the plant and the transmission or the transformers will also be inside a transformer vault inside the mountain. The transmission line that we were looking at is a 25-mile line. It's a 345 kV single circuit gen tie line. The powerhouse underground is about the size of a football field and about 9 stories high, to give you some perspective on the size. This is a picture of a photo simulation that was plucked off of the video simulation that is available on the website. It's located. The website location is in the upper right-hand corner of the slide. This is just to give you perspective of where those facilities, or physical facilities, are located. This is a cross-section of what it looks like inside the mountain and what the generation will look like when it's actually under operation, when it's in its generation mode. The water comes from the upper reservoir, moves through those conduits to the lower reservoir, going through 3 pump turbine generators that are about 350 megawatts each, that generates the power that then goes to a switch yard that's immediately outside of the tunnel entrance, the tunnel openings, and then it goes to the Robinson Summit substation. So in the past 6 months, what we've gotten done is that we have filed the final license application. We have completed some engineering studies that need to be completed and environmental resource studies. We've completed and amended cultural assessment studies that have been done. Well, I already talked about the interconnection transmission refinements that we've gone through in order to be able to make that as minimal of an impact as possible. We've completed the phase 1 geotechnical studies. We did the geotechnical borehole for borehole location number 1. We did some seismic trenching work and some other things we talked about in November. The other thing is that we've had continued consultation work with the National Park Service with regard to recreational amenities. So probably the most important thing that the folks at this meeting are concerned with is the water sourcing for the project. It is groundwater sourcing. The groundwater is secured. It's under a water agreement that's been signed with White Pine County in March of 2021. And during the construction phase, it would be up to 900 acre feet per year for 5 years. There's an initial fill requirement of about 4,500 acre feet. Even though the reservoirs only contain about 4,100 acre feet, you have to fill that tail race, you have to fill the head race, you have to fill the powerhouse works, and so that's why the fill requirement is about 4,500 acre feet. The annual makeup water for the life of the project is conservatively estimated between 500 and 750 acre feet. The reality is, in the calculations for the evaporation rates show that it'll be about 250 to 300 acre feet per year as a part of the evaporation, and that is disregarding any infiltration and or any stormwater that would be a part of that makeup. And probably the most important thing on this slide is that R Plus Hydro received approval from the Nevada State Engineer's Office, working with White Pine County, for a change in the permitted usage and appointed diversion for the groundwater permits for the purpose of sourcing the construction phase water and the reservoir fill water. That was completed in September. That approval was received in September of 2022. We currently have an application with the BLM for an HE study, a hydrogeologic study that we will complete as soon as we can get the approval for that. We have some questions that need to be answered for the BLM before they can move forward with the approval process, the review process for the hydrogeologic study. The reason why it's important to do the hydrogeologic study is that we can better understand and describe the potential impact to groundwater. This has to do with the transmissivity rates that are going to affect the amount of drawdown that we're going to see in those production wells. The generally available public information area, and based upon some test wells that were done for the golf course, indicate a range of transmissivity that would support. Am I missing something? Can you still hear me?
I can. Yep.
For what?
So the transmissivity rates that are included in the final license application as a part of the initial review of the amount of drawdown that would take place are based on the most conservative range of the transmissivity rates that are available from public information and from the test results that came from the golf course work. The next steps as a part of this would be that once we determine what the potential for the drawdown is and what those actual transmissivity rates are, that will then dictate or will inform the mitigation that will be necessary for those impacts. The timing of the study will be based on winter seasonal restrictions. Obviously, we can't get into the areas to do that when there's a whole bunch of snow on the ground. As I understand it, it's still snowing right now in Ely. And then also wildlife restrictions and equipment and operational availability. Believe it or not, getting drill rigs right now is somewhat of a challenge because the drill rigs are being utilized in a lot of ways in a lot of places, and so you have to schedule it out quite a ways. To cover a little bit about what is probably the most important thing that has happened in the last 3 weeks is that we have filed the final license application with the FERC. The reason why the FERC is the licensing jurisdiction is because the project occupies federal land or reservations. Under the Federal Power Act, there are 4 criteria that make a project like this subject to FERC's licensing jurisdiction. You can see those listed there. Because our project is occupied on federal lands, it is not located on navigable waters, but it is occupied on federal lands. That's where the FERC jurisdiction comes in. Part of also what needs to be clear is the process that we have gone through. Stage 1 of the FERC licensing process, first of all, there are 3 different kinds of licensing processes that are available through the FERC licensing process. One is an integrated process, one is a traditional, and one is an alternative process. You're required by the regulations to choose one as a part of your initial application or the initial notifications with the FERC, and we have chosen the traditional licensing process, which sets us on a path that requires certain key elements that to be taken place. And those are expressed here as part of stage 1, stage 2, and stage 3. What you see at the bottom of stage 2 is the filing of the final license application, which triggers, sets off a process under stage 3, which in and of itself has significant and a major amount of additional regulatory work that will be required. This is, Jeremy, this I think is the chart that you were looking for. So where we're at right now is at the end of the FERC stage 2 in the licensing process. That licensing, you see there where it says file the FLA, is the start of the FERC stage 3. One of my colleagues, Kevin Baker, that has been in and talked with me and with you guys before, the way he expresses it is we have finally reached the starting line, and that's where this is at. So just make sure that everybody is aware that there is a series of